Hey, if you're wondering what this song is here on Overflow Beyond the Music, this is These Lines by I Am the Storm. And if you're wondering why that voice sounds familiar, it's because it's Trevor McNeven of TFK. This is his new hip-hop project called I Am the Storm. He's gone back to his roots. So make sure you check out I Am the Storm, get all their music, and take a listen to These Lines.
These voices keep calling me, they want to degrade my economy, want me to be part of their colony, so I keep shaking them off of me, but they keep invading my property, cause they want to play my monopoly. Their sole objective is stopping me, but I know they ain't affecting the prophecy, and yet I'm an anomaly.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Overflow Beyond the Music. Good to be back here. I'm your host, Josh McCabe, and let me tell you, I have had one of the craziest afternoons I think I've had in a long time. I am right now coming to you live from the Air Canada Lounge in Toronto, Ontario, at Pearson International Airport. And let me just say that I went through the most insane amount of things to try and get on this flight back home to Nashville, Tennessee today. Let me just say, first of all, I was coming through, I got to the airport, I got to the airport, and I was really early for my flight because I was meeting up with my parents for dinner, and then it just kind of made sense for me to go straight to the airport. But I got here too early, and they wouldn't take my bag, so I had a little nap on a little airport bench. I don't know if you feel that, but I'm always vowed to never be airport bench nap guy, but I was that guy today, and so I had a little nap on the bench, and it was great. So then I finally get my bags checked in. I go through security, and apparently my guitar was testing positive for explosives. So that set off a whole, no pun intended, set off a whole series of events in which I needed to then go through all these security checks. And then I get up to customs, and apparently I rented a car a couple years ago with my family to go down to Florida on our vacation. And I guess somebody else who rented that car committed some crimes with that rental car. And so every time, I've never wondered why they always question me more, but I found out that's why. So finally, here I am, and my flight is a little delayed. So I got some time, and lo and behold, I get to the lounge, and my big recording unit with all my mics and stuff that I normally use, I left the power supply in my other bag in all of the chaos. So here I am, coming to you live with my little USB mic and hoping that the audio is okay. But here's the thing. I don't really need much preamble on this episode in particular because I'm really excited to get right to our next guest on Overflow Beyond the Music, the podcast. Now, I've known this guy, and I've been aware of his music for years. I remember listening to a lot of his stuff growing up as a teenager, or a late teenager with Desperation Band and New Life Worship. This is Jon Egan. He's part of New Life Church in Colorado Springs, and we've met before, and we talked a little bit about that on the podcast, but this guy is just such a gem of a human being. I've never met anybody who has had nothing but the most positive things to say about Jon Egan. You're going to love this interview, especially if you're a young worship leader or in worship or in music. There's just a ton of great wisdom that you can glean from this podcast and this conversation with Jon Egan. So enough of me rambling. I'm going to go grab a cookie from the lounge here, and I'm going to let you listen to this conversation that I recently had with Jon Egan here on Overflow Beyond the Music. All right, well, here I am here on the Overflow podcast Beyond the Music with Jon Egan, and you're coming to me from Colorado. Is that correct?
That is Colorado Springs. That's correct.
Oh, man. What's the weather like there right now, bud?
Well, I wish you didn't ask that because it's absolutely horrible. The last few days have been 75 degrees in perfection,
Ooh.
And today is snowing and foggy.
No.
Yes, so there's a little bit of sadness just kind of on the city at the moment.
Yeah.
But we will overcome. We'll be all right.
Yeah, we will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word, or something like that, right?
Something like that.
But dude, we were just catching up before we hit record, which honestly, I just need to start hitting record at the beginning of the call because we end up having such great chats. But we were reminiscing because we actually met several years ago now in Toronto. Yep. With Desperation Band. I remember you guys were there, and dude, it was a fun night. Me and my sister had a worship team. We opened up, and it was really fun. I remember it well, actually. It was a cool building. I remember the building, and I remember you guys. So it's awesome to reconnect with you. And we connected. I think we connected a few times after that day. Yeah. I feel like we traded some emails. And, but it feels forever ago. And since then, my sister she now works for Bethel Music. Actually,
cool.
she's in your hood tonight. So
She is?
yeah, Bethel is in town tonight. So you should, when we're done this call, I will connect you guys over text, and she'll host your whole crew.
Amazing.
So tell me a little bit about what's been going on with you lately, because she's put out a new record. We'll get to that. But let's talk about let's talk about the journey to the record. Tell me a little bit about what's been going on in your life for the past couple of years.
Okay, I'm at New Life in Colorado Springs. I've been here almost 18 years. I've got this amazing wife, we actually just celebrated 15 years, which was amazing.
Wow.
I'm going to be 40 in 2 weeks. So not like I'm on the back nine of life or anything like that, but I'm feeling really good about it. I'm ready for 40. I just feel like I actually have this kind of romantic view of 40 happening, and this just like moment of going, you can now just live. Like, you don't have to prove anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have this and because, we all battle that. And as I've gotten older, it's just amazing how you do slay those giants. But I just feel like 40, something magical is going to happen. But I got 3 kids, and I got twins who are going to be, they're 11, and I got a 7-year-old son. And so the last few years I've been doing a lot of church. And I've been working on this project, actually. I took more time with this project than anything I've ever done. I don't know why. I think there's no real big reason other than I just felt like, the worship scene is looked after plenty, and there's lots of songs coming out all the time, and let me actually take a step back from it. Let me kind of just pray through the landscape of worship and just see what my contribution could be, if anything. I thought about whether or not I even wanted to do it, there was just some songs that started kind of bubbling up, and we started doing it at church, and then when I saw people just singing, it always does it to me when people just start singing.
Yeah,
it's over. When people start connecting with the Lord with some of these songs, it's just I'm undone. So it's like, no, let's do this, because I've just aged out of the Desperation. I'm still leading worship for Desperation Conference, but Desperation Band, we've kind of just, it was all like youth events and stuff like that. We've kind of just naturally morphed out of that season, and so the next thing to do would be Jon Egan, and which I had to really sort that out, bro, because I have no issues, like philosophical issues with solo projects, but I'm just not a solo guy. I've been at the same church for 18 years. I lead worship with other people, and for something to appear like it's so much about me this is not like this is probably, I'm not trying to confess like humility. I'm probably confessing pride. Mm-hmm. Of just like, no, it's like like almost like false humility or something. But I had to wrestle through that. But at the end of the day, we have to kind of just look Jesus in the eyes and like say, Jesus, have you put something in me to say? And his answer, by the way, for all of us is yes. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with how many people are listening. Yeah. Nothing. And I think that is a scare that's happening in the worship industry for young people, is that I have to be huge or famous, or I have to be this to be used by God. And that's a lie. It's actually a lie from hell. Yeah. I think people are accomplishing the dreams that God has put in their heart now, and they don't even know it because they're getting lost in some of that stuff. So I've been there, had to slay those giants myself. So, yeah. Well, dude,
like I kind of feel like, and maybe there's something we can chat about, but I feel like we even use the words and we use them lightly, but when you actually kind of really step back and think about it, and it was like the idea of like a worship scene or a worship industry, it's like, it's so strange, because really what birthed the quote unquote modern worship industry was just local churches letting people hear the songs that they were singing. Yeah. And I almost feel like in some ways I'll have different musicians, like when I'll travel and stuff, I'll have different musicians join me or whatever, and it's almost like everyone is showing off their, like, who's got a bigger boat.
Yeah.
Like, who's got more multi-sites, who has more live streaming. Oh, you're not point to point, like, oh, you don't have stereo ears, like, lame. And it's almost become this thing where we worship our worship production, and it's weird.
That's a great way of looking at it. Oddly enough, the guy who invented this is a little random, but the guy who invented like the lights that go in lighthouses, they were trying to figure out technology for that forever, and people were just trying new things. This guy just started studying. He actually just started studying the behavior of light, and through kind of immersing himself in just the behavior of light, came up with this idea that they use today. It's called like fractal lighting. Blah, blah. It's very random, and I haven't thought about this in a long time. But I love what you just said. Is sometimes we fall in love with the form, or we fall in love with the kind of
the way
creating it, but we actually fall out of love with the source, or fall out of love with the behavior of God, of the things that we're actually singing about, and we start to then measure who we singing to, how are they responding, and I think that we actually end up like shutting a door, in our love affair with God and just what we started in the first place. And I think it's hard. You don't want to come off. The prophet needs to come in and kind of be able to point out where something might be going wrong. So there is something in us that should do that. But also very similarly, a judge does similar things. So we want to like be in the spirit of the prophet more than the spirit of the judge. But yeah, it's a concern of mine for sure, that we have stripped the song of God away from the people because we've put it on to like the professionals on big stages and bright lights, and let the professionals take care of this worship for you. And we have people coming to maybe with a desire to give something to the Lord, but we're actually kind of saying, no, we'll take care of that for you. And we're robbing them of their song. And I think if I had a goal for my life as a worship leader, is to restore the song back to the people, like give it back. Like somehow we've taken it. Somehow we've said, we've got this now, we'll do it. We've got fresh songs, we've got fresh production, we've got fresh this. And people are going, oh, okay, well, I'll hold my coffee and then I'll leave and I feel like I'll worship. And it's like, no. Can we get back to giving people the song back and say, no, this is a sacrifice of praise for you to bring. For you, this is an extravagance invitation for you. I hope that we, as worship leaders, could help restore some of that's been lost in the enterprise of it all.
Yeah, because you use the word enterprise, and I read this quote from you. It says that I hope that this is talking about your record, takes them back to a place, this generation, reminding them to do the things that they did when God first captured their hearts, before it became an enterprise, or before professional priests took over and sacrifice no longer needed to be made. And I guess and maybe it's a tough question, and maybe it's a vulnerable one, but do you feel like you lost something along the way?
I feel like I have been tempted like never before. And I think it's why it took a few years to just kind of sort out what's next, to play the game, or God wasn't going to use me. And I want to be careful there because I know people within the industry and within the enterprise. These are good people. I really, to be honest, bro, and I haven't met one person that's, we're going to just make money off this thing.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm sure those people exist, but I don't know them. I think it's just kind of the spirit of the age that we live in is that everyone wants a great reward with little cost. I mean, it's just kind of how we live. I mean, credit card companies are just giving you all this stuff, and then it's like, people are like, well, when we're done with that, we'll hop to another company. We just live in this, but worship is the opposite of that. Worship is a sacrifice. Worship is extravagance. Worship is really having to bring something heavy and costly because God is worthy. I think I've lived enough. I mean, Colorado Springs were a little bit away from kind of like the scene, and so I think there's been some protection. But I have felt like I've measured myself to that standard so many times, and I felt myself get lost in it for sure. And I think Unveil was. It's I don't know what Unveil's going to do. Is it going to just bring the kingdom? I don't know, but it's my part. It's my piece to maybe just say, hey, everyone, remember why we got into this in the first place? Mm-hmm. Especially people my age, like, guys, remember the old stuff that we used to like? So this record sounds like a lot of the old stuff, the old Vineyard music. And because I was listening to that stuff nonstop. I was listening to the old Vineyard music and old Delirious music. Because that's the stuff that totally introduced me to Jesus and the presence of God.
Well, even some of the sounds on the record reminded me of some of the
Stu G.
Yeah, I mean, like there was those elements too, but there was even I think it's the second song on the record.
Yeah.
Like reminded me of the New Life record, "My Savior Lives" from like 2010. Like
that's cool.
Just some of the sounds and like some of the stuff, and like you know what I mean? Like when music and people come from the same places, you'll always hear those influences,
Yeah.
And like Martin Smith or Stu G will always make music that you can hear a little Delirious in it.
Always.
and you can hear it a bit. And so like I love when you can catch some roots, but also I'm glad for you that it had some memory and some attachment to it that takes you back to some stuff that inspired you.
I love that. I mean, I think that's just the surprise of God, like that stuff. I mean, I you end up pulling influence from your own history. I mean, that's pretty cool. Because that never even dawned on me. So to hear you say that just feels like a big fat encouragement and affirmation. It's like, no, you like went back to, you didn't just like go back to some of your old influences. Like you went back to some of your own, some of the old, the things that you did at first. I mean, that's what in the book of Revelation, when God's just kind of sarcastically saying to the church, like, wow, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this. And I'm like, wow, like great job.
Yeah.
You seem to have done it all, but I hold one thing against you. Like you stopped doing the things you did at first. You stopped and you've forsaken your first love. And how do we get back to our first love? It's like, for me, it was kind of just doing this record and doing a first ever Jon Egan project, which felt funny. But I was like, well, who is Jon Egan? And I was just like, I know Jon Egan at 18 years old, who was just so falling in love with Jesus and the presence of God. And I remember what I did then.
Right.
And can I somehow capture doing that again? And can that be my contribution? And which is why the album's so raw, because the albums that I found Jesus through, they were really raw. So I wanted to do that. That's what I did at first. It was raw.
Can we reminisce about one of the most raw, greatest worship albums ever, Live and in the Can?
It's the album that shaped so much.
Yeah.
And there's the albums before that, like the Cutting Edge, the like double disc.
Yeah, totally.
Album. That stuff was actually kind of in the studio, but they kept it so raw. But yeah, then they did the Live and in the Can stuff, and they captured a sound that ended up capturing the world. Yeah. And it would be pure insanity for me to say this Unveiled album could do that. But I, you know what? I will be foolish enough and wild enough, because that's, I think, who we need to be as worship leaders and just as believers in Jesus. I will be crazy enough to think that what we accomplished on the Unveiled album could affect the trajectory of somebody's life, like a kid who's coming up and going, what's the worship thing all about? When I listened to that stuff when I was a kid, I said, I want to do that with my life. And maybe, it'd be a dream of mine for that to happen. For like the quote you read, just for people in my world or generation to remember how we got into this in the first place, and then it's for people coming up to discover, oh my goodness, I want to do that. I want to do that with my life? That for me, I'll probably never know, until heaven, if any of that happened. But I know that I at least gave it a shot.
Yeah. Well, and I think that we ought to dream big. I think dream big. But one of the things that God's been teaching me is that not always to think like, God, just bless everything I do in my life, but also I'm not going to hold on to the vessel too tightly.
Right.
If you want to increase this song or this album, great. If it's maybe something different, I don't know, but just do what you want to do, and I think, we got to keep giving God that blank canvas to work with.
If we can do that successfully, if we could actually just say, I will partner with you, I'll be your workmanship on the earth, like you talk about, I'll give it my all. And if we could truly give it to him and say, like, now, if it multiplies, it's up to you. If it doesn't, it's up to you. And all that's good with me. If we could truly get there, I think we become really dangerous, and in a good way. And I think I've had to wrestle that beast to the ground. At the end of the day, like the kid who gave some fish and loaves to Jesus, he only gave that to him because Jesus asked for it. He said, give me this stuff. And it was his all. If God was going to multiply, if Jesus was going to multiply it, he could have just taken one fish and one loaf from the kid.
He gave everything.
He took all of it. And it's like, I think for us, it's our job to give everything, and it's fully his job to multiply it or not. And if we could just say yes to that, man, I just think I just sense the smile of God on that. And I think that we have to fumble through that because we are human, and it's okay. This doesn't need to be self-condemnation for like, oh Lord, how's this doing? I mean, this Unveiled's been out for a month or so, and like there was something that tweaked in me after a month where I was actually able to get there and let it go,
right?
And actually just enjoy the Lord in it. But for the first few weeks, I'll confess, I was like, oh, who am I? What is this?
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, my identity still? Is it really still? And it's like, Lord, I repent of that. That is just fully just not the spirit of what this thing is and what it ever was meant to be. And, and I turned from that. And
well, I mean, it all comes down to you have to essentially lay it down on the altar and be willing to just to sacrifice it to the Lord. And, I was also reading where you kind of talked openly about taking a season back and having a season where you felt like you were running too fast and you took some time off.
Yeah.
And like as you looked at that, was that a sacrifice that you struggled to make, to lay your essentially your life or maybe even identity down on the altar for a season?
Yeah, it totally messed with that. I mean, it's like our ego says you have to keep going or you'll be forgotten. But it was the best thing for me. I was the executive worship pastor for a couple of years. That was just so far outside my comfort zone and my giftings. So it kind of brought me to my absolute end and just all the different sides of that I just was not built for. And I just thank God I have a generous pastor and generous church to say like, no, we need you well, and so I was able to take a couple months and just get well and just get healed up and it was the best season. It was the best season for us and thank God there was no emergency happening. There's no sin issues or anything like that. But my heart was burning out, and I know it's almost cliche to say burnout, but like, oh yeah, burnout. I get burnout.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I mean, I was really anxious. I was really, I just was losing sight. And, man, sometimes we got to make sure we stay wholehearted, Right. And that's really key. I heard someone say recently, it was a poet, I forget his name, but he said the antidote to burnout is not rest, actually. The antidote to burnout is finding wholeheartedness. And for me to step away and for my wife and I to kind of talk through, okay, who are we? What are we meant to be doing? What is the Lord saying? For us to step back and after a little break with wholeheartedness just made all the difference. So guard it, fight for it. Fight to stay wholehearted. And it's not always a feeling. You don't always feel wholehearted. You know, we have to,
right.
We can't worship our emotions here. We can't worship our feelings, you know, but I know that I know the presence of Jesus changes everything. So I hope to just be a piece of that.
Well, let me ask you this. Maybe it's a tough question to ask, and I have a purpose with it, particularly for any young worship leaders, young musicians listening to this podcast. But as you look back at that, lack of better words, burnout or running too fast, how much of that as a leader and as a pastor was self-inflicted?
I would say 95% of it. I think 5% of it is sometimes the church runs hard and can lose sight, but that wasn't really the case with me. I think it's such an amazing question, bro. And I think people need to hear that the Lord, He wants you to look after your soul, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that when we're trying to gain the world, we do forfeit our soul. And I think that we do that, it's not really out of vain conceit a lot of the times. It's not really out of bad motives. It's actually just trying to hang on. It's trying to be obedient. It's trying to do a good job. But I think immaturity kicks in, and you can't stop because you actually probably think a little too highly of yourself. And I think you actually go like, well, if I stop, it's going to affect this, or if I stop, it's going to do this. And that really is looking at yourself as a little too important. And I think one of the best things we can learn is how the kingdom will march on.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that we get to be a small piece of it is amazing, but we are not the center of any of it.
Yeah.
And I think, it's such a great question, but I think that most of it was self-inflicted. I think most of it was me just trying to white knuckle this thing through. And because, I don't know, I was told when I was young, I'm going to change the world. I was told I was going to do this. It's like, I can't bow out. I can't disappear. And it's like, yeah, you can because I can't say this more strongly. At the end of the day, Jesus wants you.
Yeah.
And can we just camp there for a second? And it might even sound cliche. It's like, no, listen to that. I mean, he does not need your gift on the earth. He's going to sort out this thing. He's going to reconcile the world to himself. He's going to do it.
Yeah.
He wants you. And I know that at the end of the day, Jesus wants me with him, becoming more like him, and all that stuff. There's a scene in The Shack, the movie, where he walks on water with Jesus, and then Jesus sends him off to do this thing, and then he comes back kind of with this breakthrough, and then he's like, okay, let's go back out again. He just runs out into the water, and he's up to his knees in water. He looks back at Jesus, and this isn't scripture, this is just a movie, but I think it's powerful truth. He looks back at Jesus, and Jesus says to him, don't you think this works better when we go together? When we do this together? And I think we get in trouble when we go at it on our own, and we start outpacing the rhythm of God.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're gonna sink. We're gonna get wet, and it's not gonna work. And Jesus is saying, "Would you go at my pace, please? Because when we go together, we're gonna walk on water." You know. So yeah, I praise God that I was able to take a couple months away and just repent for that, and own my mistakes, and like, oh my goodness, God, have mercy on me, a sinner.
Man, and that takes a time of vulnerability, and I mean, I've had a similar journey, and we can catch up on that another time. But I think it's really cool what God does with that, because you can press through and make another record.
Yeah.
I even remember one time putting out like a live EP project, and to this day I can't listen to it because I hate what it did to me. Yeah. Like, I hate how miserable I was. And like, if that's not how I picture. I mean, that's how I picture Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Like look at this building that we created, but we had no straw to make the bricks. We had no this. Like we created this building, but I don't even want to look at it because of how we had to create it.
Yeah, you know what? And I want to say something to you, Josh. Like you may never be able to listen to that live EP again, and that's totally fine. But I just feel like how God is so kind. He's so ridiculously, outrageously kind, and he redeems things. And what you did in that season, bro, and you may not be able to listen to it, but it's not lost. It's not, and it's not for nothing. And don't let that lie be a part of your story. It's not.
Yeah,
that's true. I bet you God used it in ways that you'll never know. So I just want to. I don't know. I feel like just to tell you that, bro. There's no regrets. There's no regrets in a life that's given to the Lord. And we're just at the end of the day, bro. Back then, whenever you did that, I'm sure you were just doing your best.
Yeah, totally.
You're doing the best you can with what you got, and that's God doesn't want us condemning ourselves for any of that.
Well, it's funny too because I think back to the time that we met in Toronto there, and I remember doing that event and it kind of being indicative of how fast I was running and just and kind of and how I had my sights focused on this worship industry, or like getting into that thing. And I was actually taking 2 weeks off vacation in Florida with my family and I think our daughter was maybe 6 months old at the time, and we were down there. And, this opportunity to come open for you guys came up, and I flew home from Tampa, Florida to Toronto, played the show, had dinner, and went straight back to the airport and flew back. And I was exhausted and grumpy, and I go, man, and I remember thinking to myself, I got to do it because, I got to connect with these guys. And, and
Right.
What? Right. And it's so funny we get wrapped up in that. So, what would you say to the young worship leader today who sees the aura of the connections and the co-writes and the conferences? Like, what do you say to the 22-year-old?
Yeah, I'd say there's nothing you can do that will control any of it. So you have to stop. Anyone who's tried to control things has looked back and go, well, we can't control any of it. I think you have to stop and you have to trust God. The Lord's going to do what he wants to do. The Lord is bigger than the industry. He's bigger than any enterprise. And he's going to breathe on you. And it's a pretty for sure thing that it's not going to look like you think it's going to look. But you were not in this to dictate how it's supposed to look. You were in this to be obedient. And he has not called any of us to success. He's called us to obedience. And we have to tap into that, and we have to slow down, and we have to stop. It's very natural. It's in the world we live in to do that, and we feel like, no, this is obedience. I'm going to work hard. And I think once you get removed from it removes the grace, when you're on your own and you sink. And you can't trust in your own understanding. You have to trust. You have to trust God. You can't lean on your own understanding. You have to trust God. And that's it. Seek first the kingdom. Whatever's added is added. And we have no real way of knowing.
Well, the thing is, like, when you seek first the kingdom, it's not always, tangible things. Sometimes it's love, joy, peace, patience. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and those are, those are the fruit that you want to carry.
Totally. Jesus, like, when it comes down to it, he just said, would you love me with all your heart, and would you love others? So it's a lot simpler than what we make it. So I would say get with any young worship leaders like trying to do the hustle.
Yeah.
I would just say the Lord is coming to you right now and just saying, just stop. Just stop. Just chill out. I got you. And let's do this together. And wherever it goes is wherever it goes. And can we get ourselves to the place where we're just surprised by it? I've been at New Life for 18 years. I didn't set out to do, I'm going to do 18 years at New Life. And we've done Desperation Conference for 18 years. And we're going to build a movement. No, we're just going to be faithful. We're going to be steady. And anything that happens is shocking. It's like, wow, what a surprise. But that's the living God. He surprises us. That's what he does.
Yep. Well, I mean, we talked about fruit, and you've written a ton of songs over the years, and this may be kind of more of a fun question to reminisce about.
Yeah.
But is there a song that you look back and go, how the heck did anyone give the okay to record that? Like, who approved that song? I feel like everyone's got one, but maybe I'm wrong.
No.
Or maybe it almost made it.
That's a fun question. I haven't sat in the place of regret on song.
Yeah.
Because I know that we were young and just going for it, so there were songs that we'd never sang again after recording it. I'll think of one.
You'll think of one. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I had a song called "Give Myself Away." I think it was, and we sang it once, and that was it. It just was hard. It was too hard to sing, and it didn't make a ton of sense or something. So I remember well, that was that.
Well, everyone's got something, and I mean, what I always find more interesting to ask is because it kind of gives a window into someone's personality a bit. But is there a song that you wish you wrote because it just not for financial reasons, but because it just says everything that you you just took those words out of my mouth?
Yeah. Did you feel the mountains tremble?
Yeah.
When I sing it, it's like I just sing it like I wrote it. I just believe in it so much. It sends us out, lifts us up and lifts us out. And it's an up-tempo song with richness, and I sing it all the time. I wish I wrote that one.
Martin Smith, he is a legend, and
he is special guy. Yeah,
very anointed guy, very special guy, and
I'd say. Yeah, no question. And the Vineyard guys, the old Vineyard guy, Brian Dirksen, and some of those guys. Oh man,
Canadian,
so good. Yeah, fellow Canadian. There you go.
Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time on this, and I've had the chance to listen to your new record, Unveiled, today, and I heard one of your songs on a playlist last week, and what would you say is the song that if someone's going to go open up this record and not start from the beginning, where would you say you need to listen to this song first?
I think that little stretch of Unveil into there's a prayer where I just encourage in the prayer, dancers to dance and artists to come alive, and I think it's my heart just to encourage people that at the end of the day we are carriers of the glory of God and carriers of the presence of God. And so if you have 11 minutes, Unveil, the song goes into a prayer. That's my prayer for you.
Well, man, I'm going to encourage anyone listening to this right now that right after this podcast is done, go turn that on and make that part of your prayer life. And maybe you're listening to this podcast because you just stumbled across it and you wouldn't call yourself a quote unquote Christian, or even you feel far from God. I would encourage you to listen to that track and have those words be sung and spoken over you. Thank you. Yeah. So Jon, tell me what's the rest of the week look like for you, and then we're gonna head into hearing one of your tracks.
Tomorrow night we do our monthly worship night here at church called First Wednesday. So we're gonna do that, and then that's tomorrow night, and then Thursday night we got a bunch of youth pastors coming in from around the country, a bunch of youth pastors that are part of the Network of Desperation, and so I'll be leading worship with them and hanging out with them Thursday night. So the next couple of nights are going to be fun.
Oh man, always good stuff and good ministry stuff. And I'm telling you, I'm gonna find a way to come hang for one of your First Wednesdays real soon. Then
come on, man, you are very welcome here.
All right, man. Well, this has been a great conversation, great catching up and hearing your heart. And to play us out of this podcast, we're gonna hear the song "Unveil" from Jon Egan off his new record titled "Unveil."
Unveil my eyes to see you.
Man, I just love that guy, Jon Egan. What a gem of a person. I'm definitely going to make sure I'm over to Colorado Springs soon to go hang out with that guy, check out his church, and I don't know, just partake in some worship. And I want to encourage you, make sure that you go pick up his album. It's called Unveiled. You're really, really going to enjoy it. It's such a powerful worship album. I just love the spirit in which the whole album and the songs are written. You're really, really going to enjoy it, so make sure that you check that out. Make sure that you check out the links on the show notes. Make sure you share this with a friend. Make sure you tell somebody else about the podcast. But as we get ready to close this podcast, I'm thinking about introducing something new to the Beyond the Music podcast, and I thought maybe at the end of the show we would do some shout outs. So I'd love to give a few shout outs. I'd love to give a shout out to David Carlson, good guitar player from Sudbury, Ontario. He listens to the podcast. I appreciate that man very much. I want to give a shout out to Matt Robinson, my buddy from Oshawa, who is just always such an incredible encourager. So I bet he's listening to this. Give a shout out to Dan Perna, who just got married yesterday. He's played drums for me for a long time. I love that guy. So major shout out to him. And I also want to give a shout out to my youngest sister, Rachel. She made me all these sweet mugs and stuff, and like tumblers and like travel mugs with my band name on it, and that was just so kind and so sweet of her. So shout out to my sister Rachel. That's all we got right now on Overflow Beyond the Music. Cannot wait to hang out with you again. Again, check out the show notes. Give us a follow online. Hit us up, and maybe you can get a shout out in the next episode. That's all for now. This is Overflow Beyond the Music. I'm your host, Josh McCabe. We'll see you again soon.